Hello again and welcome to Shed Talk, my weekly magazine video series looking at the keeping, breeding and showing of cage birds with a particular focus, as always, on the exhibition style budgerigar. Well, in the last episode I said in this one we would talk a little bit, well, two things really. One was to talk a little bit about how I go about weaning the birds. Probably see just behind me we've got a few youngsters now on the cage floor, and I said I'd talk a bit about that next stage of weaning. And the other thing we said we would do is we would look at a couple of birds out, or 4 birds out, 2 cocks birds and 2 hen birds, and that you decide what the next pair will be to replace the hen who's in cage number 4. So that's what we will be doing in this episode. As always, if you enjoy the videos, don't forget to hit the like button. Do of course comment. I read all the comments and try to answer them all as well. Please do feel free to share these videos on any other of the various Facebook groups. And of course, most importantly, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, do hit the subscribe button. All the subscriptions help the channel to grow. And of course, if you want early notifications, then don't forget to click on the bell icon. Right, then we'll begin this episode with looking at how I go about in my shed weaning the baby budgerigars. So with some birds now coming out of the nest box, some of the youngsters leaving the nest box, it's a good time for me to discuss weaning, how I wean the birds in my particular shed. I do apologise for the noise in here. Lots and lots of birds chattering away as always. It's always a good sign, noise levels in the shed, but not good for recording. So I do apologise if the particular one shouting behind me is causing a problem. Anyway, weaning the baby budgerigars. So I expect like many breeders, the weaning process can be a little bit fraught actually. I find, because it's always a bit of a dilemma about when do you finally remove the youngsters from the adult pair and pop them into the nursery flight or nappy flight, whichever you might want to call it. Move them too early and there is a risk that they're not feeding each other or not feeding themselves, and you might lose them. Move them too late and there's a risk they will interfere with the pair when they want to go down to breed again for the next round. And of course, that we spoke a little bit about it in the last episode, there is a risk that you might lose some of the youngsters because either the cock or the hen parent birds become aggressive towards them. So it's, like I say, it's a little bit of a I suppose a bit of a worry always around the weaning process. So how do I go about weaning in my shed? Well, the first thing I'd say is we start the weaning process almost from the moment I bring the first youngster in a nest box. So the moment the first youngster has been rung, from that moment onwards, every day I place about an inch of millet spray inside the nest box. Now, I've said it before, there's a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, I do it because it gives the hen something to focus on rather than the youngsters in the nest box, so she will start picking at that rather than perhaps picking at the feathers of the youngsters. So that's the first thing. The other thing it does is when the youngsters see the hen picking at the millet spray, some of those will start picking at the millet spray, and whilst they're still in the nest box will begin to learn how to feed themselves. Now, millet spray is particularly good when you're weaning birds because the millet itself is quite soft, and indeed I know I recently saw an episode of, actually it was on the Canary channel, but it was about how I think it was a Belgian breeder, goes about weaning his birds, and he was saying that some of the youngsters will wean almost exclusively on the millet spray. So the millet spray then will help the birds when they're in the nest box. So that's the first thing I will do. So hopefully some of the youngsters, by the time they leave the nest box, will already be used to shelling seed. The other thing, of course, is that I will, when they're about to leave, is I put the chick hide in it. And we spoke about the chick hide in the last episode. If you haven't seen that, I will now put a link across the top of the screen to that particular episode, so you can go across and watch that as the reasons why we use the chick hide. So the chick hide will go in there, and as I've discussed in that last video, that will just help the chicks when they leave the nest to find a bit of space of their own out of the attention of the two adult birds. The other thing I will do is continue to feed the soft food in the dish that's on the floor of the cage. The soft food is slightly easier again for the chicks to pick at, and as they see the parents eating the soft food, so they will also go and start picking at it, and there'll be bits in there that they will start to be able to eat quite easily. So it's that gradual process of weaning them off the parents feeding to feeding for themselves. One of the other things that I find that can be quite useful is, and I haven't done it yet in this cage, and I will do it over the next couple of days, is to lower the drinker. So bring the drinker from the perch down onto the bottom of the cage, or put an extra drinker on there, because as the parent birds stop feeding the youngsters, and sometimes this will happen before the youngsters have learnt to perch properly, learnt to get up on the main perch. So they might become dehydrated. So at least they can find the water on the bottom of the cage, so at the lower rungs, prior to them needing to be able to perch to get up to the drinker that's at the top of the cage. So that's the other bit that I will do. So the final thing is to keep an eye on them. So watch the youngsters. I know for a fact now that the oldest chick in this cage, so the dominant pied is the oldest chick in this cage, that one and one of the older normal greens, are already feeding themselves, because I have seen them doing it. I've seen them come out. They're no longer really calling for food from the parent birds, and when they do, the parent bird is dismissive of them. So I know those two birds very shortly would be okay to move into a nappy flight. The final two, the two younger birds, not really sure about. They're spending a lot of time in the chick hide. They come out and they're still calling to the parent bird, so I think they will probably need another 4 to 5 days at least to get used to it. Now, so main thing I think about knowing when to move the chicks is about watching them and understanding and seeing that they are feeding themselves. You may remember when we went out at the beginning of last year to talk to Bob McCabe at that shed visit, and again, if you haven't seen that, it's a really useful episode. Go out and find it. I'll see if I can put a link across the top of the screen to that episode as well. But I asked him about when he moves his chick, and he said that there's no set date really, and I think, right, there isn't any set date. I'm not one to disagree with what Bob McCabe's saying, but I don't agree. I do agree with him that there is no set date when you're moving that. One of the things he did say was he takes note of the length of the tail. And again, I don't know if you can see it in the clips of the youngsters, the older youngsters in this cage. Their tail is now actually quite long. It's no longer a stubby little thing. It's actually almost sort of half the length now that it's going to end up being. And that's a good sign that the youngsters are old enough to think about starting to move them from the flight into the nappy flight. Okay, so we spoke a little bit about the weaning process while they're in the cage. The final thing I'd say about weaning is when you put them into the nappy flight. So it can be quite a shock to the birds when they go into the nappy flight, because of course they don't have their parents around them and it's a brand new experience. They're used to quite a small breeding cage, and the nappy flight for them is going to be quite big and open. There's no longer all the stuff that might be in there. Sometimes it's worth putting a chick hide in there as well, just so they've got something a little bit familiar in there. In the nappy flight, I will always have the water down low as well as up on the perch, so there'll always be 2 water bottles in there. they will still continue to be fed the soft food, and they will get a full spray of millet in there as well as the normal seed. The other thing I will do is I will take an older cockbird out of what is in effect the OAP flight or the sales flight, and I will put an older cockbird in the nappy flight with the youngsters. This serves, I think, two things. One is the older cockbird will show them how to find the seed, where the seed is, because he's used to it, and will go to the seed dishes, and the youngsters will follow his lead around feeding. The other thing it will do is it help the youngsters to learn to understand that there is a pecking order, because the tendency will be that he will be the dominant bird in there for a little while. You'll then find that one of the youngsters will take over as the dominant bird in there, but they begin to understand there's a pecking order, not just with their parents and the other youngsters. Why an adult cockbird and not an older hen? Main reason for that is I find that the older cockbirds are much more tolerant of the youngsters than the older hens. Just my own personal experience. Some of you may find it different, but for me, hens are less tolerant of the youngsters when they're pulling at tails and asking to be fed, because they will continue to, or they may continue to ask to be fed by an adult bird in there. So that's why I put an older cockbird in there. It tends to be an older cockbird that's gone past the breeding, so they're not thinking about, harassing the young hens that are in there. So that's my process around weaning the birds. I hope that's been some help to you, but like I say, there are lots of other ways of doing this. Speak to other breeders, speak to people that you're buying your birds off of if you're new to this and this is your first breeding season, but do be prepared to see the birds go backwards as they wean. So you'll have a look at a bird in the cage, like behind me. There's the dominant pied, actually, the young dominant pied looks quite reasonable in there. And you'll see a bird that looks really, really nice, and it looks big and looks like it's going to be, a winner for you, or do reasonably well on the show bench for you. You'll put it in the nappy flight, and suddenly it'll begin to go back, and it will begin to look, less a bird than it does in there. Expect that. It always happens. Weaning is a stressful time for these birds. They're also going through a molt, don't forget. They'll begin to molt out of their nappy feathers, so their barhead feathers into their adult feathers, which is also quite stressful. So be prepared for the birds to go back. So that is normal. That is completely normal. If there is a youngster that looks like it's not feeding itself when you pop him in there, if you can catch it, that first day, or certainly within a day, pop it back into the main flight. Any longer than that, I think, if it's been 2 days or 3 days, popping it back into the main flight or back into the cage with the parents can be a real risk, because there's a risk that, they will see it as a threat and will begin to attack it, forgetting that it's one of their youngsters. Very, very small memories, I think, that budgerigar tends to have, or very short memories. Anyway, so the only thing I can suggest if you've moved one a little bit too early is that you perhaps try and top it up with some, weaning food, if you've got any. So anyway, that's the way that I go about weaning the birds. Like I say, hope that has been helpful to some of you. What we'll do now is we will grab a couple of or two pairs out of the main flight, pop them into the show cage. I'll put 2 cockbirds in together, then we'll put the 2 hens in together, and let you make a decision as to which would be out of those cockbirds and those hens that will make the right pair to go into cage number 4. So we're going to start off with the 2 cockbirds then, and you can see them here. So we've got a sky blue on the left, and this is actually the father of the cobalt that we're replacing actually in cage number 4. So quite an old bird, although I think he's still got possibly another round or 2 in him. And the bird on the right, so the light green, who currently looking a little bit on the scruffy side, this light green is actually his son, so he's also the brother of the cobalt. So I'll just we'll just see if we can get the light green to go back up again so you can get another look at them both. Okay, and I think you can probably see that they are related. See if I can get the cockbird to jump across, or rather the sky blue to jump across. There we go. So there you go. So both of these birds did reasonably well in the rundown. And I suppose the biggest issue for the light green is a little bit around wings, I think. So, but it's actually not too bad. So there you go. Both birds have a reasonable face on them. Perhaps lacking a little bit of spot, light green, so that might be what we're thinking about when we're looking at a partner for that particular bird. But these are the two cockbirds that we're going to pull out. Unfortunately, all of the other cockbirds that I'd like to use are a little bit too young, and we'll have to wait until after Christmas. So there you go, the two cockbirds then, as I say, sky blue on the left and the light green on the right. What I'll do now is show you the partners for these, or the possible partners for these two birds, and perhaps you can decide which bird I should put with which hen, or which, and in fact indeed which would be the very next pair. So will it be the sky blue with a partner or the light green with a partner? So let's have a look at the two possible hens then. And the two hens are sisters. So these are off of the cobalt. So so from that you can gather then that they are the granddaughter of the sky blue and the nieces of the light green. So we're actually, the pairing is either going to be father to granddaughter or uncle to niece, which isn't too close. So both of these are light green cinnamons, and as I say, they are sisters. In terms of their overall look, the one on the right, so as we're looking at them, has a much better style about her. It doesn't lean across the perch as much as the one on the left, but the one on the left I think has got slightly bigger spots than the one on the right. So there we go, and looks to me like a slightly deeper mask, so a longer face on her. So those are the two hens, and we need to make a decision as to whether we put which one we put down first. Not a great difference in terms of their age. They're both about 11 months old, so they were both in one of the very early rounds from last year. And that's whether we want to put them to the light green or to the sky blue. So thoughts then, it's up to you to choose now which you would prefer. Let me know in the comments, and we will pair up accordingly. Well, I've popped the four birds, the two cocks and the two hens, into one of the stock cages behind me, and they might be joined shortly with a couple more birds or a few more birds, because I need to get some out of the main flight and prepare them for a show this weekend, and that's the Swindon Cage Bird Society annual show, which I will be going down to. So and hopefully we'll get a few videos of some of the birds there, and I'll have that in the next episode. What I'll do at the end of this particular video is I will show pictures, so still pictures of the cockbirds and then of the hens, to give you a better idea, and we'll perhaps, particularly the two hens, we'll have to number the two hens because they're both cinnamon light greens, so it'll be a bit difficult for you to say pair the sky blue with which of the two hens. Anyway, so I'll put those up, it'll be self-explanatory. If you want to put in the comment, you know, the sky blue with hen number 2, or the light green cockbird with hen number 2, please do, and whichever we get the most votes for, we will pop into cage number 4, as I say, in a little while. The other pair I might actually pop into one of the other cages as you know, I take the next pair out. So, because most of the other youngsters in the main flight are still a little bit too young to go in before Christmas, maybe January, February time. I'd be looking at getting some of the better birds out, the better youngsters from last year out. So, like I say, do leave a comment in there around which of those birds you would like to see. And we'll talk, perhaps we'll get those in the cage in the next episode, ready, and show you which one of the winners, along with that CBS show, highlights from the CBS show. But until then, as always, if you enjoy the episode, don't forget to hit the like, do subscribe, but most importantly, do stay safe and enjoy your birds.